Little Salty Homesteader here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If this is your first time joining us here, welcome. I am a backyard gardener in Zone 8A, but today it is snowing, so I'm not outside. When I started my YouTube channel, one of the things that I really wanted to do was add in some cooking videos and tutorials, because I do have a culinary degree and because I have a wheat allergy, I thought it would be useful for other homesteaders out there who might also have a similar allergy. So today I thought that I would do a sort of a how-to on homemade chicken and dumplings, and I'm making gluten-free dumplings for this. I filmed everything from my phone, and the video clips, my kids are watching Ghostbusters in the background, so I'm going to mute all of that noise out of all of those video clips, and I'm just gonna voice over and kind of walk through everything that I did for this. And if you guys try it, please let me know in the comments, let me know what you think. It actually turned out really well. The texture of these dumplings is almost exactly like what we had pretty much my entire life eating chicken and dumplings. So I was very, very pleased with this recipe. But with all of that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and get started.
Okay, so for this recipe, you're going to need 2 chicken breasts. You're going to need 2 quarts of bone broth. You're going to need 1 large yellow or white onion, 3 or more garlic cloves, 2 carrots, and if you have it, 2 celery stalks. I did not have that today, so I used celery salt as a replacement. You will also need poultry seasoning, salt, and pepper, and then we'll get into the dumpling ingredients later. So the first step is to dice up all of the chicken really small. I'm doing it in about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch dice. And when I was a kid, and probably still so, my grandma would slow cook an entire chicken and make a broth that way, and just cook the chicken until it completely fell off of the bones, and then she would remove the bones from the pot. And my mom would use the chicken breast tenderloins, and she would just put them in there whole. And it tasted great, but I don't really like my chicken that big. I like really small bites so I can get lots of things on my spoon. And my kids don't really like the flavor of other parts of the chicken in this. So the chicken breast works really well for this. After you're done cutting up your chicken, heat up about 2 tablespoons of olive oil in a Dutch oven on medium heat. Season your chicken with salt and pepper and add it to the pan or pot and brown on all sides. While your chicken is browning, you can use this time to go ahead and peel and dice your onion. I usually try to cut my chicken, my onion, and my carrots all to be the same size. So in this case, somewhere between 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 an inch. The smaller it is, the more pieces you can fit on your spoon whenever it comes time to eat. Once you're done with your onion, you can then take your garlic cloves, and these are pretty big, so I'm only doing 3. If your cloves are smaller, obviously you would go with more than the 3. You're going to crush them so that you can peel them easily, and then you're going to finely chop them. Once your chicken is browned, then you can add in your onions and stir them in and cook until those are softened. Then you will add in your garlic and cook that until it begins to soften as well. While you're waiting on the onion to soften, you can peel and dice up your carrots, and then you will add that to the pot after your onions and garlic have finished cooking. I tried to make the carrots around the same size as the onions and the chicken. That way everything is kind of cohesive, and you can fit more pieces on the spoon and get lots of flavors that way. After your onions and garlic are nice and soft, then you will stir in your carrots and let them begin to soften as well. And then you'll start adding some aromatic seasonings to the mix. The first seasoning that you're going to add is going to be celery salt. This spoon says 1/4 teaspoon, but I actually added double that. So I added 1/2 teaspoon. And then you will also need poultry seasoning. At the beginning, I added 1 whole teaspoon. And then at the end, I adjusted some seasoning and added probably another teaspoon more. And then you will need 2 quarts of bone broth. This can be homemade or it can be store-bought like I have here. You will just pour all of that into the pot and then bring it up to a simmer and cover it with a lid and let everything soften and all of the flavors come together. And while all of that is simmering, you will work on creating your dumpling mix. So for the dumpling mix, I used 1.5 cups of this Bob's Red Mill all-purpose baking flour, 2 eggs, 2/3 cup of milk, 1/4 teaspoon of xanthan gum, and 4 tablespoons of melted butter. Now, I did end up adding about 1 more cup total of the baking mix because it was just way too gooey and sticky to be able to roll out and use how I needed it. So to roll out the dumplings, first I sprinkled a couple of teaspoons of the baking flour onto the counter, and then I dusted my rolling pin with the same baking flour. That way the dough would not stick to the pin as I was rolling it out. Then I scooped the dough onto the flour and topped it with a little bit more baking mix and pat it out and then rolled it pretty thin. We like our dumplings to not be super thick. You could just spoon this into the top of the broth mixture and just let it kind of steam that way, but we like ours rolled really thin and cooked in the broth. After you slice your rolled out dough into strips, it's really important to put the dumplings into the bubbles. So as you can see here are the strips, and then I'm just going to take small pieces and I'm going to drop them directly into the boiling bubbles. The reason for that is so your dumplings don't start sticking together. That sort of prevents like a big glop of nasty uncooked dough from happening at the top. And as you start to add more and more dumplings, it will get harder to find bubbles, so you'll just give it a quick stir to sort of create a little bit of room, and then drop the dumplings in anywhere you see bubbles and a little bit of space. At this point, all of the dumplings are in, and I have sort of cleaned up the excess baking flour off the countertops and sprinkled it into the top. That's going to help thicken up the sauce of this quite a bit, and then you're going to reduce it down to a simmer and finish cleaning up the mess while those dumplings cook. Then you will adjust your seasonings. This is where I added a bit more poultry seasoning and salt and pepper, and then just keep tasting until it tastes salty enough or seasoned enough to you. This looks like a lot of salt, but with all of those dumplings and kind of starchy things in there, it actually wasn't enough, and I ended up adding a little bit more. Once the seasoning is just right, then it is time to taste it, it's time to scoop it into a bowl and eat. Okay, now it is time to taste it, and this is my first time tasting this dumpling recipe, and I was really concerned about the texture, as you could tell by my awkward face, but I was pleasantly surprised. It was so delicious. My kids ate it. Everybody loved it. It's a success.